I don't know where they hold their,
You don't go to the
police commission?
police commission
I thought
meetings?
they held them here.
yeah, they do. That's
Oh, they
right,
hold
yeah.
it
Okay.
here.
They
Okay.
hold it here, yeah.
I was gonna say, that's
Thanks,
a,
chief.
No problem.
No,
I was gonna say, that's a small room when you go in there and take the right there, the Armin Mayu meeting
Yeah.
room or whatever. That's a small room.
Anybody remember Victor Decato?
Hank Decato?
Victor.
Victor Decato. Not the same.
Victor used to pull fire alarms. And he'd stand or he'd watch trucks come.
Jeez. Yeah, I used to hang around with the cruise.
And then one day, he pulled the, and every fall, he pulled a fire alarm. So he'd get locked up for the winter. And then one day, he got out of jail and he went down and decided, he pulled the one on the corner of Oak Street. And nothing.
Oak in Maine.
Yep. I mean, they only had to come 100 yards. Nothing happened. Except the cruiser showed up. What Victor didn't know is they'd done away with the whistle. They used to have a whistle on the roof of the fire station that bleeped like you were just talking. Poor Victor went to jail early in the year. He had to watch cruisers for like 2 months. It was awful.
Wrecked your schedule.
Yeah.
Who's would they wash? The county sheriff or the?
All
Oh, 'cause the police would go up, they bring them up there.
Oh, I'm glad you're here.
When did you retire? from
Right
jail?
on time, yeah.
Okay.
Took over behind you? Dan?
No, a guy named Bob Avenue.
Oh, okay.
Running this meeting?
Have you
And
guys
Mike
read
Moyer
it?
took over from him?
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
I went through the.
No, actually,
Went through the
they hired a
agenda.
lawyer.
Oh, no, we haven't read it.
Who was that lawyer?
The lawyer that was, what?
Police chief for a few years after Avenue.
After Pavino would have been.
Baker, Bill Baker. He was a
Okay.
lawyer.
Huh.
Ready?
Then Moyer.
Good evening.
Danny
Welcome
Paulus
to
was
the
the-
City of Laconia Planning Board. Tonight is Tuesday, February 1st, 6:30. Do we have anybody on Zoom? Do I need to read that?
Nope.
Okay. Then we're good. We'll do a call to order. Yes, yes. At 6:34 PM, my apologies. And now we will do would the staff like to be introduced? We'll do a roll call first.
Here.
Charlie Sinclair.
Here.
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 Here,
Scott McWilliams.
here.
Brett Reynolds.
Here.
Stacy Susie. Here. Okay, our recording secretary is Kalina Graham. Our staff in attendance is Rob Mora and Dean Trefethan. And have we all had a chance to look at the minutes from our previous meeting?
I did look at the minute. I had made a suggestion to Kalina. Don't know if that addition was it in there? Regarding the rules and regulations for Isaiah 61, as well as training materials. Thank you.
And a fence.
Hmm?
And a fence.
Oh, and yeah, that, I know the fence was in there.
Yes.
Yeah. I did see that,
Okay,
yeah.
so any other comments on those minutes? Okay, I would ask for a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes from the January 4th Planning Board meeting as amended. It was in there?
As accepted.
Okay, as accepted. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those minutes are accepted. And I believe we can move on to 8.1 PL 2021-01. No, we can't.
6.1.
Oh, we have a presentation. I almost skipped you.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna let that happen. So the table I'm passing out is very similar to one that we did send out to you earlier in your packet. Couple of minor corrections, which I'll go through as we go through here. We are in the process of looking at the table of dimensional requirements. Which is our setbacks, our green space requirements, density per acre, structure height, etc. And we have the proposal that's in front of you right now is the same proposal that went to the Master Plan Steering Committee week or so ago, and we have a couple of corrections. That's the corrections that we'll go through here. So the top of the table is green space. What we've been doing is researching green space requirements in other communities. We have looked at the communities that are immediately adjacent to us, Guilford, Meredith, Belmont, etc. But there are some significant differences and there are some commonalities. The biggest commonality, of course, is we're all trying to protect the lake. And so, you know, that's one of the issues concerning green space. But we also looked at a few other communities in the state that are what we're calling peer communities from the standpoint of they are cities and or large towns with significant presence of population. Plymouth, Keene, and Somersworth are the ones that we looked at that are approximately our same size in population and compared our numbers versus their numbers. And as you can see, our current numbers, which are mostly 60 or 65%, are drastically higher than the peer communities. And I don't have them here, but we will share this at some point in time. We are also higher than for the most part, not in every category, but for the most part, we are also higher than the communities immediately surrounding us. Not a significant difference, you know, we're at 60, they may be at 50 type thing. But you can see where compared to Plymouth, Keene, and Somersworth, we are significantly higher. Again, we have a very unique situation that is different than Plymouth, Keene, and Somersworth, and that is the situation with our lakes. I mean, that is a key differentiator that we always need to keep in mind when we're talking about these kinds of things. But the proposed changes is to go to 50%, 40%, depending upon the zone. Master Plan Steering Committee did a straw vote and settled on 30% for the CR residential, and lots of discussion on that. You know, and again, none of these are finalized. These are just proposals. I want you to see where we're going with these. One of the, in addition to kind of putting us in line with our neighboring communities and peer type communities, it's also an effort in some zones anyway to try to get as many parcels as possible to be conforming. We're never going to get to the point where all parcels are conforming, but in the RG zone, for example, which is the older part of the city, Pine Street, Spring Street, et cetera, off of Elm Street in Lakeport. First of all, lots are traditionally much smaller in those areas than what we would require today. A lot of the lots are non-conforming. Be surprised at the number of 0.15 and even smaller lots that are in that zone that support either a single-family house, a duplex, or even a triplex in some cases. There's no way that they can support 60% green space. When you take a house, driveway, a garage or a carriage house in the old days, and those kinds of things, leaving 40% for that kind of stuff is very, very difficult. So, and then even in the other zones, it's a combination of trying to get what I feel is a more realistic number, and also to try to get some more conformance in the existing lots. Any questions on green space so far? And again, this is not finalized. This is just, this is where we are right now. Charlie.
So if somebody, one of these ones that don't conform, they have a triplex in this very small thing. And if that gets sold and somebody wants to tear that house down and put something else up, are they allowed to do that? Or are they grandfathered in? Or are they punished because of?
They would be grandfathered in. They can't go larger.
Okay,
They could go smaller or less, less coverage area. And there's a number of different ways of doing less coverage area. You could take up asphalt and put down permeable pavers, for instance, those kinds of things. That's expensive, but you could do those kinds of things. But yeah, if you had an old structure, if you had a fire or, whatever, you can tear down, and as long as within 2 years you rebuild, you can basically rebuild the exact same thing in terms of size and bulk, both things.
but within 2 years, and what happens after that?
You would lose your grandfather after 2 years. So there is some incentive for people to do that. Now, of course, then there's the variance avenue. If you waited more than 2 years and you lost your grandfathering, certainly to go before the zoning board and say, it's been 2.5 years, this is what it was, I think that's a pretty good case. And I think the zoning board would probably look favorable on that argument. But if you wait 5 years, and you're in, who knows, any other questions on green space, Bruce?
I'm still a little concerned about 40% in the RG area. I mean, some of those houses sit almost entirely on their lot. I understand they'd be grandfathered, yes,
Yeah.
but the house next door,
Yeah, and it was, and I guess that's one of the points that we need to continue to discuss. Maybe that's still too stringent, I was in, believe it or not, I was in Boston over the weekend. It was lovely weather. But, one of the things that struck me as I'm looking out the hotel window is there's no green space anywhere, and somehow the stormwater, and they have all the systems, don't get me wrong, but the stormwater is taken care of, and it goes where it goes, which is either to Back Bay or we're into the ocean. I mean, just like all ours eventually goes to the lake. But, we are trying to make an effort at least to try to keep some of the stormwater on site, on property. But you're right, Bruce, we need to discuss that probably.
I mean, if you look at these three, but I suspect even the surrounding towns,
Yeah, I mean, when you get into Guilford and Belmont, they really don't have the equivalency of an RG zone
Yeah,
in
probably
terms
not.
of, density type things. So yeah, it's hard to make comparisons, but
but I mean, they're all at 25.
right. Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Exactly.
and,
Yep.
I mean, 40% of a lot, a small lot is a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
Giving my,
Yeah, yeah.
Double
If you got a 6,000 square foot lot to say 40% is got to be green space, you're right. That's
What's
tough
the
to do.
30 in parentheses after that
that is what the master plan
is recommended?
steering committee is recommending. Yep. Yeah. That was, well, it wasn't just Bruce, but yes.
well, I was hoping you.
But
would
when you
keep
go
that.
to Boston, you don't expect to see green space. You expect to go to a park. and
Yes.
get your green space
Yeah.
there. You're,
Right,
Jesus,
right,
that's
yeah.
scary.
you're conceding defeat and accepting that you're gonna have people on top of you.
If you're buying a property, in many neighborhoods in the city that are zoned RG, whether it's Pine Street or Baldwin or Bowden or spring, winter, I don't know if we have fall or not, but anyway, Highland Street, et cetera. Yeah, you're right. That's different than buying a house out on Old North Main Street, which is in a very different zone. And you're right, there's a different expectation there. And when you buy, you see what your surroundings are, and hopefully you take that into account. Yep, I agree. All right, moving on to the density per acre. Difficult to do comparisons to other communities because particularly our neighboring communities, as you probably are well aware of, there is a tendency for our neighbors to require very large lots. Samerton is a 3-acre minimum. There's a lot of 2-acre minimums out there. We have a whole section of town, when you look at the map, that whole green section is 2-acre zoning. We're not proposing any change in that thing, but we're not proposing any change in the RS, which is the lighter yellow up on that map. We're not proposing any change to the SFR, which is the bright yellow gold that's up at the top of the map. And we are proposing a change in the RG from 6 to 8 units per acre. Discussion around that is subject to the availability of water, sewer, stormwater drains in the area. Most of the RG area, that would be true, but it is not true for every lot in the RG area. So that's something to consider. And if we revise the table of dimension, maybe we, put an asterisk with some type of qualifier there, which we can do. The RA district is the Blueberry Lane area for the most part. We have another area to the south of the city where Apple Ridge is, that is also zoned RA. I went through and looked at the properties that have already been developed. We currently have a 9, and they are either at 9 or above 9 currently. And we're proposing 12 for that. And then in the CR residential, proposing an increase to 8. The little asterisk on the RS is minimum lot size, and that's the next stage that we're going to go to with the master plan steering committee and then come to you with, is to talk about minimum lot sizes. And then, but in the RS district, just a question mark, whether we want to allow duplexes by right or some form of review that is, say, lesser than a site plan or a variance request. There's this term kicking around the country right now that is big in planning circles. It's called upzoning, meaning you take all your zoning laws and you increase them, which is, sort of what we're doing here. But in some places they are really upzoning. It's very drastic. The state of California recently outlawed single-family zoning. I forget exactly what they replaced it with, but you're enabled to at least have a duplex and maybe more on any single-family lot in the state of California now. Not without its controversy, I'm sure, and not without probably some people thinking about, some type of referendum to change it or whatever. I have no doubt that that kind of stuff will happen, but just as something to think about in terms of as we go forward. The RS zone, you could already do an ADU by right. We have a permit process for that. We're also in the process of changing that process, but it would not change the idea that you would be allowed to have an ADU. So again, it's just a discussion point, something to think about. Any questions on density, why or where or how?
Or should we consider some language in here that because places are rural residential, for instance, that might, because they have no sewer and have no water, they need an acre.
Yeah, they
2
need,
acre,
currently
2
they need a
acres.
larger lot, yes.
They have a requirement for 2 acres. And that makes all the sense in the world when you try to think about a leach field and that sort of thing. But suddenly, if the city puts in sewer and water, there ought to be some language in here that then changes that so that additional housing could be
Yeah,
on those lots.
I mean, if there was a road that we did put water and sewer down, that was zoned RS, I mean, they would automatically be subject to the smaller lot size. That doesn't change the existing lots that are already there.
Right.
And it may or may not be practical to divide them or to do something. It's easier to, if it's a 1 acre lot and you got a house on it, it probably is easier to make it a duplex or to do an ADU than it would be to subdivide, because we have this very unique habit in New England of always putting the house right in the middle of the lot, as opposed to off to one side. Many times we don't even leave room to build a garage. It's like, because who would ever want a garage? 10 years from now?
But the issue becomes, I think, that at the moment, it would appear to me, yes, they can do a ADU,
ADU.
but they can't put a second building on the property.
They could with an ADU under certain circumstances, but you're right. If you just wanted to, I don't want to do an ADU, I want to,
Full-blown,
yeah. full
and
2
all I'm
unit,
saying
3
is-
unit, whatever.
we ought to consider adding some language that says, once you have sewer and water, you can't just have one or the other.
Right.
Once you have both, then you can, I mean, people tear down perfectly good buildings and put up other ones. Like Barton's Motel, for instance.
Yep.
I just think we ought to consider putting in some language so that we don't end up having to fight the battle again.
Okay.
5 years from now,
Absolutely.
because I know this will come as a shock to you because you haven't listened to me rant and rave, but I think the time has come for us, the city, to start taking care of infrastructure in a more aggressive fashion.
Yep.
But part of the sales pitch has to be that it'll accommodate growth.
Right.
And so I think we need to think about some language that specifies, once you've met this criteria, then you drop back to whatever other.
Yep, we can do that.
Okay. Sorry, Madam Chair.
That's okay.
Anybody else on density?
Well, I guess I thought the consensus at the end of that meeting was to allow the ADUs a chance for a period of time before.
We did discuss that. That was discussed, whether I don't know that personally I would call it a consensus or not, but yes, that was discussed. Like I said, we're in the process of changing the ADU. Right now, you have to get a special exception from the ZBA for an ADU. The proposal is to remove the ZBA from the process and basically do it as an administrative function, administrative decision. Still holding to almost all of the criteria that we still have for ADUs. And one of the thoughts was, if we make that change, successful in making that change, let's let that play out for a period of time, whether it's 12 months or 18 months or 2 years or whatever, to see what happens. One of the discussions that I've had with Master Plan Steering Committee, and I will share with you. We have done probably in the past 2 years, we have probably done a dozen to 15 ADUs in the city. But we get requests in our office for probably twice that many. And once we go through the process with the people and explain to them what they have to do and what the rules and the regulations are, for some reason or another, and one of the reasons is they don't want to go to the zoning board. That's not the only reason, but that's one of the reasons. They say, nope, that's too much. I don't want to do it. And they go away. So I think we are missing the opportunity to create more ADUs simply because the process is a little arduous and unknown. You know, the outcome is unknown. The thought process of the average person is, I got to go to the zoning board, and what if they deny me? I've gone through all this and I get nothing. Whereas with the administrative decision, it's more of a definitive, if you meet the criteria, you know, and we can determine that very, very quickly. You get to do your ADU. So that was the thought process on that.
Yes, Counselor.
I thought we also at least discussed notification of neighbors as opposed to the whole street or whatever. We'd notify neighbors on either side. Wasn't that included?
Yeah. After we made the decision to grant, we would notify abutters. ZBA does that beforehand. In this case, it would come after, and that would give them an opportunity to appeal if they so didn't like the decision. They could appeal.
And the notice will include that information.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So moving on to height. You know, we've had a couple of discussions at this board about height. We've had discussion at the Master Plan Steering Committee about height. And we have a series of question marks there because we still have not come to any consensus of what is the right height for any given zone. We did have a discussion about the idea of having some type of a formula. It could be 10% higher than the average of your two neighbors, or 15% higher, or whatever number we decide on. And that's certainly one way to go. Or we come up with a number, or we leave the numbers as they are. And one thing that I do want to emphasize, particularly in the CR zone, but also in all of the UC zone and parts of the C zone, the commercial zone. We now have performance zoning, and I don't want to shock you, but someone could come in and propose a 200-foot building. I'm not saying that you're going to approve it, but I'm just saying that under performance zoning, they could do that. On the other hand, the exact opposite is also true. Someone could come in on, say, Lakeside Avenue and propose 60 or 70 feet, and the planning board would say, no, that's too tall for that area, even though you maybe meet the requirement, it's too tall for that area. And that is certainly within the realm of the planning board. And remembering, I think I know what the question is going to be, but remembering that with the performance zoning process, the first step is a conceptual plan to the planning board. And that's the first step for planning board to give the input back to the developer. Yeah, I like it in general, but it's too tall. Or, you know, no, I don't like this because of X, Y, and Z. So, you know, that's your first step. And then, of course, later on, and as you go through the site plan process under performance zoning, we would have another opportunity to, if they're stubborn and adamant, to deny, you know, with good reason.
with good reason,
Yes.
that the majority of the board doesn't feel that it's acceptable in this area, is that good reason?
I think you need to elaborate more than just that. I think you need to be able, why isn't it acceptable in that area? Using Lakeside as you're right next to the veterans' property. All of these are historic homes. They have certain architectural style.
Unless they
There-
all get torn down.
Well, and then so I mean, but you, with good reason, and a good reason is not, I think that's too high. That's not a good reason. That's a personal opinion. It's not,
But
So-
too high because it blocks the view of everybody of the
Yes,
lake
yes,
might be a good.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay,
You gotta continue the statement.
the reason I bring this up is because the city attorney at that meeting we had next door,
Careful.
with her comment, well, I'm not talking about that. Just
Already
that-
did.
No, all I'm saying is that the comment was,
I tried, Madam Chair.
the comment was,
You can deny with reason,
okay, I want to be sure about that.
Yeah.
Okay,
but again,
that's the. end
You
of my-
have to be
Yeah.
able to defend your reason.
Oh, I can
Right,
defend
exactly.
any
So
reason.
you-
It's just a matter
It
of.
just
somebody
can't be
else-
personal
Well,
opinion.
anything I do here is not personal. It's to represent the, like we all do,
And
it's
that-
to represent the city.
and that's not to say that if you deny with good reasons, that you're not going to be challenged in court and the judge is going to disagree with your good reasons. I'm not,
I'm aware of
I'm
that.
not saying that, but certainly if you sit here and you go, no, that's too high, deny, you're certainly going to go
Well, I
to
can't
court
imagine
and you're
anybody
certainly
here
going to
saying
lose,
that.
you're certainly going to lose that case, it'll be reminded back to you.
Yeah,
But
you gotta have a
if you
reason.
have good reasons, you have a better than 50-50 shot of winning that case.
But if the height restrictions are, I think Brett was the one that said that's a pocket park or a pocket something. And we don't, and I agree that, if we took Lakeside Avenue out of the commercial zone, I can't remember the term you used, but.
Spot zoning.
Spot zoning, thank you, sir. Yeah, that's not a good thing, I guess. So I get the hedge, I could feel the breeze. So if
It's against the law.
so somehow to come up with something to protect
But-
Lakeside Avenue
right,
for whatever,
But
because it makes it easy.
if you made a conscious decision today, and I use the term generically, because you can't make the decision today, but
Right.
you made the decision today that within 100 feet of the center line of Lakeside Avenue, or whatever number you pick or whatever, here's the regulations, and you pass that regulation and put that, that's not spot zoning.
Okay, and then,
Because you've made the decision ahead of time. Spot zoning is at 76 Lakeside Avenue, I don't want a 60-foot building, but at 120 Lakeside Avenue, I'm okay.
okay, so as I look to my fellow board members then, and even if that's done, somebody could go and ask for a variance, correct?
They could ask for a variance, and again, it's performance zoning, unless you were to take Lakeside Avenue out of the
Right.
performance zoning.
Or whoever, but it's reasonable, but then if somebody comes before, ask for the variance and stuff, and it's reasonable, whether I'm here or any of us is still here, I think board members are gonna react to that if it's reasonable, in a positive way, if it's reasonable.
Right.
I'm just saying, so, yeah, okay, thank you.
I'm just wondering, since we're talking about Lakeside Avenue here and the height restrictions, which way is it limiting the development of Laconia more? Whether we leave the height the way it is and we can deny a design because we feel that the height, even though it's within the allowable limits, that it is going to be a detriment to the neighborhood. Or if we decide now, let's lower it, and a developer would have to come in first with the conceptual design under performance zoning. I'm trying to weigh in my mind, is one of those more
Or restrictive?
more restrictive or less favorable to a developer?
Certain developers.
I don't know. You know, and as you were saying that, I want to put an asterisk after the performance zoning thing. It's conceivable that someone could do a development in say the Weirs, okay, and not use performance zoning, and then they would be subject to the table of dimensional requirements. So if we left the 60-foot for the CR district with the idea that, okay, performance zoning, we're going to get an opportunity to say yay and nay on the height of the building, you may not. I find it hard to believe that, given the availability of performance zoning, that you're going to get a development that's not going to take advantage of that, but never say never, right? And so, you know, it could be that if you decide to leave it at 60 and someone comes in and does not use performance zoning, I'm just going to stick right, you know, to the numbers. And they're going to propose 60 feet, in which case you probably don't have a very good argument for doing it. So a roundabout way of answering the question is from that standpoint, you might be better off putting a lower number. Again, what is that lower number? I don't know.
45.
And then that almost forces them to use, if they think I've got to be higher than that for whatever reason, you know, to make the development work, or, you know, to make the pro forma work or whatever, if I need to be higher, then they've got to use performance zoning, in which case then they're into that subjective ability of the planning board to, you know, really have some yay or nay there. You know?
And
So that would be more restrictive for developers.
It would be, but I mean, but it would also, it also would almost certainly drive any prospective developer to use performance zoning. Again, never say never, but, you know.
But Dean, I know what, where you're coming from, Brett, but when you say hinder developers, I would say hinder certain developers. Not every developer is going to want to put a 60-foot building up. And I think we can look at what I think is probably one of our really lucky spots is there on Al Mitchell's property on the big hill. That developer is putting in housing that's not 60 feet tall. I think it's 2-story, 3-story.
2 with a walkout type
so
situation.
You're looking at 23 feet tall buildings there. When I guess that being in the zone it was in, he could have gone and asked for 40-foot buildings there or whatever. You can't imagine. But so I think there are developers out there that'll look at whatever rules are there and they'll say, like the guys at Thurston said, we're going by your rules, they're going to be 56 feet tall. Or if the rules are 30 feet tall or whatever, and they know, hey, how can I make this work with a developer? And they'll come in and work with those things. I don't think it's necessary. I think what we're doing by doing that is we're looking for developers that we want to work with what the community is good for that part of the community. That's all.
So when we talk about the height, I want to try to understand the concern about the height. Are we talking about the CR district and potentially the UC district, or are we talking, I mean, we have a 60-foot height currently in the RA district, which is, again, Blueberry Lane. Now, none of those buildings on Blueberry Lane are even close to 60 feet tall. They're 40, 45 probably, including the roof. Apple Ridge, probably the same situation, maybe probably about the same height. Is the concern the CR district and to some degree the UC district, which would be, say, the Barton's redevelopment type situation, or is it 60-foot period is just deemed too high, period? I guess that's the question that I have. And again, we're not making decisions tonight. This is discussion.
I think it depends on the site, because I mean, a 60-foot building, depending on where it's sited, might not be a problem. Depending on, where it sits. So I think it's like almost a case by case.
How
How
tall?
tall's the apartment, I mean, the inn over here?
Best Western?
Yeah, well, no, it was
70,
Six-
75.
It's close to 70 when, you know, the actual roof is probably 62 or 3, but then they've got the little
Yep.
sidewalls and everything. So, yeah, because when they redeveloped, we went through that, but I mean, it's, the height's been that way for, it was done on urban renewal, and they were not subject to our rules and regulations, so, at the time. You know, Sunset Towers is certainly more than 60 feet, even
Yep.
at the
I agree.
upper
I mean, it
end,
Depends
yeah.
on the site. I mean, if something happens with the driving and, you know, further up in the back of the woods there, somebody wants to put up, you know, 60-foot or 50-foot, whatever, buildings, that's not really, in my mind, at least, it's not an issue. And I can't imagine any neighbors in the back complaining because they're all protected by trees now and everything else. It's very.
But that's pretty
tall
much
pine
handled by
trees.
the performance zone, isn't it?
Yes, it would, in that case, yes. I mean,
Lakeside Ave is a little different.
I think it's pretty safe to assume that if anybody steps up to the plate and buys the drive-in property as an example, that they're going to use performance zoning, because they're going to want to put
Yep.
as absolute much as they possibly can
In the back area.
in there, you know.
Yep.
And there are a couple of other properties that height maybe not be the issue, but there may be density or setbacks or other issues that may be, you know, that they would use performance zoning for.
Yep.
You know, the property that now extends from Lakeside back to Endicott north.
You're talking about the water slide, that
Well, the vacant part, you know, yeah, where the was, yeah.
Judy Carulla's house is?
Yeah, the 76 Lakeside Avenue, and then behind that, yeah. I mean, that's, if that is to get developed and there's a unique challenge there from a standpoint of if you're standing on Lakeside Avenue, if you're on the sidewalk on Lakeside Avenue, that house is already 8-9 feet, you know, above the street.
is-
It's just, you know, there's a retention wall there and it's up there, and then the land keeps going up. So someone put a 50 to 60-foot structure that's, you know, say even 100 feet off of Lakeside. When you're on the sidewalk looking up, it's going to look tall. You know, it's going to be that perspective, you know.
Do you know if Meredith has a maximum structure height?
They do, and I don't know what it is right off the top. We'll when we get back to this, I'll get those numbers, but yeah, they do. Yeah, everybody has maximum heights. Some of them are.
Some of, in Meredith, some of it's 45.
Yeah.
According to the town manager.
I think it's probably, you know, it might be a little
35,
taller right in the center that's been redeveloped. I don't know, but we'll certainly get those numbers. So I still don't have a number consensus. I've got one number, but that's okay. The discussion continues.
I'm always willing to give that one number.
Oh, if you're asking
They're all
for numbers on
arbitrary, though.
Lakeside Avenue, I would say 35 feet.
The numbers
And
are,
And I say 35 feet, as I whispered to you across the table here, when you said 45 feet, I remind everybody that the towers on where Barton's Motel those are 44 feet tall, according to what came here. So think about that, 44 feet. And you look at those, for a lot of people still in the city, it literally takes their breath away when they look how big those are. And those are only 44 feet tall. So imagine those on Lakeside Avenue. That's why I'm thinking, 35 feet is.
It also said the average contractor would rather you said 46 or 44 rather than 45. Just because wood comes with dimensions.
the numbers.
Just a
Well,
thought.
that's why they make saws too, but you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Contractors.
All right, as I said, this will continue at Master Plan Steering Committee. We'll flesh out these numbers and move on to lot sizes and other parts of the dimensional table. To lot sizes is complex. It's not a matter of just saying, okay, in zone X, we're going to have 8,000 square foot minimum. There are other sections of the zoning ordinance that then goes on to say you got to have a minimum building lot, building envelope, and so we got to look at all those numbers as well. So it's not as simple as just saying, let's go to 8,000 here and 6,000 there, and we're done, because there's other numbers that need to be adjusted elsewhere in the ordinance.
Just back to the height question again, Dean. It seems, Lakeside Avenue is sort of in a category of its own. How do we go about treating it that way? Or could this board, everything staying as it is, just say, we want to preserve the historical character of this area, Lakeside Avenue, and we don't feel this project or structure is appropriate for that location? Would be on firm ground that way?
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 different ways you could go about that. And again, if you do it consciously and ahead of time, then you're out of that realm of the spot zoning. You've made a conscious decision that and again, it's not just one lot. We're talking about, a stretch
Yes.
of land. If you wanted to just talk about, where the water slide used to be, then, that would be spot zoning. But, when you start talking about
The whole
from
street.
from the neon sign to beyond, let's say Foster Avenue type situation, you've got, I don't know how many properties along there, but, certainly no one could accuse you of spot zoning when you've got that number of, and you're not changing the use of the zone. You're just, you're tweaking a number or maybe a couple of numbers. And so, like I said, there's different ways of doing it.
So the board could act that way and still
Yeah.
be on solid
Yeah.
footing.
Well, when you said the board
Legally.
acts that way, are you saying we just say that? Or are you saying we pick a number to make it
Well,
the
at some
whole
point in time, we're
street
going to have to pick a number,
for the whole
and we're
street?
going to have to
Because that takes-
define what the parameters of that
Yeah.
space is.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the details of the different
No, no.
options, but there are different options of ways to go here. Yeah, but yeah, we'd have to pick a number, and we'd have to, and you got to go through the process. You're going to have a public hearing here, you got to send it off to city council, et cetera, and you may or may not get it at that level. Who knows?
I think at the easiest thing at that point then would be to pick a number for the whole zone. And then just rely on performance zoning within there on what the people want to do.
That is one way to do it. Yes.
Counselor.
Could I ask a favor? Next time, would you tell us what all these are? Because I forget.
Oh, sure. I can.
I have no idea what a UC is. I know everybody else here knows categorically, but
Probably
some of
not.
us old
Okay, yeah, we
timers.
can do that. Yeah, we
Makes you feel better. I just looked them up.
Wanna bet on that?
So, more than happy to provide a ledger.
Yeah, if you just, yeah.
I
Thanks.
don't know.
We can do that. All right, thank you for your attention.
I just have one comment to close that out if I can. It just seems strange to me how we're trying to up all of the densities and then decrease the building size. It's like telling me I can have 2 pieces of cake for dessert, but I have to take in my belt 2 notches. Just speaking personally.
Get that guy a glass of water.
But I think that's what performance zoning has done for us. To a large degree. I mean, we've added a lot of property to performance zoning in the city. And I think it gives us the opportunity now to say,
Get creative.
yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to build another high-rise downtown here, we might well look very favorably upon it, assuming it looked good and all those other things. I just think performance zoning gives us more flexibility. That said, I guess I would just add the caveat that a lot of developers come in, look at the rules and walk away. Which is why I think we need to make them understand what performance zoning really means. It should be at the front of the book, not at the back, not an asterisk.
Okay, I don't want to skip anybody this time. So I believe 7 is good, 8 is good. Are we okay with 8.1 now? Okay, I believe this got accepted a couple months ago. So
Writing this down.
Yeah. 'cause I'll be able-
do we have to do a motion or?
Yes,
Okay.
the applicant's asking to delay. They have a couple of applications before
I should do
DES.
it.
They are expecting to receive information on any day now, and
So they're talking about
if
this
it goes their way, they will not need to do this, but if it doesn't go their way, they will need to do this, so. So they're asking for a delay for another month, so they know where they're at.
Do they have a demo permit already approved?
They, I believe they do, yes. Looks like, I believe so.
Windows, they've been through the building, windows
Yeah,
are
yeah,
gone, doors
I
are gone.
believe so.
all that.
There's no reason for them not to. Either way, regardless of the outcome of any of these. So you need to have, yes, you need to have a motion.
Okay,
to
so I
table.
need a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the continuance till the March meeting for PL 2021-0137 SP 0138 SU 23 Summit Ave.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. I believe I need a motion to have this accepted.
Yes.
I'm getting good at this.
Make a motion to accept the application number 05-020 SU 05-028 CUP cluster amendment 3 for 198 Endicott Street North.
Second?
Second, all in favor?
Thanks.
Any opposed? Thank you, and we have a guest.
He is the applicant.
An amendment to a 2009 approval at the Weirs Beach Village to simply exclude decks and patios from the square footage calculation on footprint.
Notice how we said simply. I like that.
I honestly, when I read this, my first thought was, is there a limitation on the size of them? Of
There's a
decks
limitation
or-
on the footprint per lot of, I believe it is 1,200 square feet. So.
But I mean, if somebody wants to put a deck on, is there a certain amount that,
Well, presently cannot, it can't, it's calculated with the footprint of the foundation and it can't exceed that 1,200 foot mark.
correct, if we pass this, though, will there still be a limitation or can that deck go on for?
I believe with the current approval, it could go to the property line. The restriction is 25, minimum of 25 feet between buildings. So one building could be on the property line, which is, it's all one lot, so it's kind of a make-believe property line, as long as the other one was 25 feet away. So I think, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
No, I think you are.
So this is a very unique situation. I don't think we have another development in the city that has this kind of restriction on it. So it's currently a maximum of 1,000 square foot foundation for the house, not for square footage living space, because it could be a 2-story house, but 1,000 square foot maximum for 1,200 square feet, including the garage. So that gives them and then there are other limitations on the sizes of garages. So there's a lot of limitations going on in this property. The issue has been over the years that most of the houses built when you take into account the main part of the house and the garage, that they're coming out in the 1,150, 1,130 square foot range, which leaves you 70 square feet for your front porch or stoop or whatever terminology you want to use. And a lot of them have a simple 5x5 entryway type porch. And then, so you subtract, if you got 70 feet left over, you subtract that 25 feet out of that, and that leaves you 45 feet for a deck in the back, which obviously is not a deck that most people want to have. And so what this proposal does is simply remove the decks and porches and those kinds of things from the equation. The houses stay the same size. Maximum is 1,200 square feet or 1,000 for the main part of the house. The only thing we're taking out of that equation is decks and entryways and porches. And when we say porches, we mean not enclosed. So if someone wants to have a 3-season room or, that kind of a thing, that's going to be included in their 1,200 square feet. But if they want to have a deck or perhaps a porch with a roof on it and it's open, then they could exceed the 1,200 square feet. Like I said, this is a very unique situation in the city. All the houses are built. So it's not like this affects any future houses. All the houses are built. This is currently it's affecting people in the development that have been there in some cases for several years now, that want to do some type of enhancement to their outdoor living space. And they're up against this number that there's no way to resolve it.
So why is this so strict? Was anybody here in 2009?
I don't think anybody was on the board then that's here now. It was, the history on the property is it was a campground. I mean, a real campground, camper trailers and tents and everything else. And then the developers came in and decided to convert to year-round housing. And the planning board was looking to create, this was starting the 2005 timeframe, and it finally got approved in 2009, just before the bubble burst, but was looking to create, see if this sounds familiar, affordable housing / workforce housing / everyday housing, as opposed to what we normally see in the Weirs Beach, right?
Luxury.
So that was the idea, and to do that was all of these restrictions when it came to square footage. Obviously, smaller houses equate to lower price points. Now, what houses sold for originally in 2010, the original houses, and what they would sell for today, obviously their prices have gone substantially up. But in relationship to your typical 2,000 square foot house or 2,500 square foot house or whatever these houses are, I mean, what's your latest price point's right around 300,000, I think, Tom, right?
Yeah.
So I mean,
About 100,000 too low.
yeah, or lower, yeah. So I mean, I know to a lot of people, when you say 300,000, they go, "Oh my God," I get it. But compared to 400,000, 450 for most new houses that are being built today in the city, it's a lower price, obviously, and the reason for that is because it's a smaller house. I mean, there's no question. These are not extravagant houses in any way, shape, or form.
Sizes range from 11 and change to about 1,700.
Yeah, with a second floor.
Yeah, the second.
Oh, okay. Hang on just a sec. I saw.
Thank you. And meaning no aspersions on our guests. I hope that this is very carefully crafted. And the reason I say that is we've had some other experiences in the city where we assumed the developer was meaning this or that. And we found out later that's not what they meant. Or how they finally ended up, so. And again, I certainly don't mean any.
Yeah, no,
aspersions.
I understand.
just,
And that's why I wanted to make the point that
I
all
don't wanna
the
find out.
houses, all the houses are built. So
Yeah.
it's not a question of, Tom's not going to go in and do something because he's, I think you got them all sold.
Yeah, if I could interrupt for 1 second, as the developer, I'm not doing any of this. I'm here because one of my buyers would like to put a deck in his house and was informed that it would exceed that amount. And when he spoke to the town, they said I would have to make the application as the landowner. So I'm basically here on his behalf.
and I
Yeah, I'm not gonna be building any more decks or anything like that.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but if we're not careful and your new buyer puts his whole backyard into a deck, we're gonna, we, the neighbors, everybody's gonna, well, you told me it didn't count.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. It was
Yeah,
gonna
And
be
so-
I'm
this
concerned about
massive-
it doesn't
So from
count.
that standpoint, you're right. There is no upper limit. I mean, if someone wanted to go build a 400 square foot deck out, if they've got the space and can meet the setbacks and et cetera, then we don't have that. This proposal does not have that limitation. So far, that has not what's been asked for by the various homeowners that have come in. They're looking for standard size, 10 by 15, 8 by 12 decks. That's what they've been looking for. Now, when
Is this on a case-by-case basis?
well, going forward, this would be the property, the individual homeowner would have to come in for a building permit. And
Do they have to notify their neighbors?
no. Now, whether there's a provision in the homeowners association for a homeowners association to approve any new decks, I don't
Right.
know. I don't think so. But
And right there is one of the things that concerns me. If the homeowners have an agreement, I can hear the argument, but the city said.
Yep.
There's no upper limit, so.
So
you could, as part of this, you could impose an upper limit.
And I guess that's what
Right.
I just want to see us be careful in these things, because.
Yep.
They can go real south.
If I could make one more suggestion, just to preserve the appearance of the place, I think if it's illuminated, there'd be nothing stopping anyone from adding one to the front of the house, which probably wouldn't be right. So maybe if it was restricted to decks just in the back of the house. Because I don't
And
believe there's a
that's
setback
perfect
requirement.
example. Yep.
I don't believe there's a setback requirement from the road.
So this is a cluster development, so there are no setbacks. All they have is a building envelope of a certain size that they're allowed to build it. And like it was mentioned previously, there is a fire break that's also required. And I can't remember whether it's 15 feet or 25 feet. So theoretically, you have a building envelope and you could fill that building envelope, but you would still have to be so many feet away from the nearest structure.
But if you wanted to put a deck over the rest of your area under this proposal, you couldn't, I think.
So because the lot lines are actually, like you said, I think imaginary lot
Yes,
lines.
it's
You own
122
the
acre
large
lot.
parcel. So it would be a race to see who could build their deck to their lot line first before the neighbor could, because then the neighbor would have to stay 15 feet off of theirs. And then you end up with like
Beautiful thing.
a floating party out there where it's just decks and house.
They're
And you
gonna
don't
take
ha-
all our
and you-
wood.
And you don't have to worry about cutting the grass anymore. or-
Well, now you've talked about something that might be a good idea. I've cut a lot of grass in my day and I'm getting tired of it.
So
Still the deck.
you could limit the square footage of, in the
For deck.
parentheses, we have decks, unenclosed porches and patios are excluded from the calculations. We can add something there that says, but cannot exceed. Give me a number,
12.
200 square feet or, whatever number you want to come up with. And must be to the rear of the main structure,
Sounds like
something
a
along.
Great job for
that line.
staff.
So do we know what the average imaginary lot size is, just for relationship?
They're
About 6,000 square feet.
They're small, they're small.
Yeah, but if you only have a footprint of a structure on there that's 1,200, you still have a lot of square feet that you can do the deck with.
Well, the one restriction there is, it has to be the home, and I would imagine would apply to the deck, has to be at least 25 feet from the next structure. The next home, so.
Tom, have you heard more requests for back decks or for front?
All in the rear.
They are, okay.
Front have a little porch in the garage, and they're about 25 feet from the road.
So nobody is really looking to expand the front.
I do not know that. I just haven't heard any of that. This was
Okay.
just
The
one of
important
my
word
buyers
here
bought a
is, yeah,
ranch,
Yeah,
which is
Exactly.
one floor ranch, which has the biggest footprint. And then that's why he's bumping up on the 12.
What are the dimensions of the homes? Do they vary?
About 28,
Like length?
two-story of 28, 36, 28 wide, 36 deep. The ranch, I believe, is 28 by maybe 42.
The original houses
Guessing
that
that
are
number.
up near Endicott Street are, some of those houses, they're, the foundation for just the house, not including the garage, is around like 720 square feet. You know, so those
Okay.
original houses are
I
not.
can imagine somebody would want a deck that went out beyond the footprint of the home. So that's why I was asking,
Yeah,
So,
just to maybe come up with a number.
so could we say something like it has to be in the rear and it cannot exceed 50% of the footprint of the house?
How about 20 by 20 or 10 by 20, 200 square feet?
Depending on the lot shape and everything, though, you might want a 12 by 20 or a 12 by 16. And if we put 10 by 20, then that limits the,
I would do square footage.
Just the
That
square
way,
footage.
Yeah, square
Yeah.
footage,
Just
Yeah.
that gives them. They can go
200
out,
square
they can go
feet or-
wide, whatever they need to do.
but
They
yeah.
can make it L-shaped if they have to.
That way there's no
mean, I think-
comparing with the
so
Joneses.
which,
I think 200 square feet to add deck is a reasonable number, and I know that for some people, they would, that's not big enough, and for other people, that's plenty big, and you gotta draw the line somewhere.
Yeah.
Whether 200 is the right number.
1,200
or
square foot home, I think that would be adequate.
I mean, that's room enough to put a grill and a little dining set.
Right,
Sure.
right.
As big as this room, 20 by 20.
that would be
Oh, that's 400.
Yeah,
Okay,
10 by 20.
that's my calculation.
I'm just
Bro,
wondering,
let's go
because if
back.
someone's paying 300 to 400,000 for a little house.
Yeah.
A 10 by 20 foot deck isn't gonna fit their 20 friends out there in a hot tub and everything else, you know?
Well,
I
they
mean-
went from none.
Do you have any idea this, the buyer that came to you first requesting that
This
you
deck,
come in front of us, the size of deck that they're talking about? Any idea?
I am not sure of what size deck he's thinking. I know the home is 28 wide. So I don't know what size deck he's proposing.
So if he would go that whole 28 feet and 10 feet, which gives him enough to put a table out there with chairs and you could still walk around it, then you're talking about 28 by 10, 280, maybe 300 square feet would
He's
be a
probably-
good one.
Nobody's really gonna go 10, right? They're probably gonna go 12 or 14
Yep.
and. Small, right?
So 240 or 250 or.
Yeah,
I mean,
that
whatever
way
number
we
you-
know it's not gonna take up the whole wide.
I mean, the person that you're talking about has the biggest lot, right?
No, it's the biggest footprint home. All the lots are the same.
Oh, got you.
Right. That's why he's bumping up. If it was, the two-story houses have a smaller footprint, but more livable square footage because they're two-story. This is a
Okay.
single-story ranch.
Mm.
So
That's-
all of his living space is on one floor.
That's why I thought if we would say 50% of the house footprint, square footage. That way, if you do have a bigger house, a little bit of a bigger deck would still look okay, but if you have a small house and put this big deck on it, it might overtake it, but that way you're limiting it. But yeah, 50% might be too much, then 25% or something.
I still vote for the
Square
square
footage.
footage. I really do.
What number do you like?
I'm okay with 250 or,
250.
you know, what, I mean, what were you thinking?
I'll go along with what everybody else thinks. I just think 10 by 10 doesn't really get you much
No,
out there.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
hundred.
my house came with a 10 by 12 when I first got it. And it was like everybody,
Oh,
Six
okay, that
people
must
in
have been
there.
what I had, yeah.
yeah,
But when I was doing my farmer's porch and I was thinking about 6 foot. But then we taped it off and said, okay, a love seat is about this much, and then you have a little coffee table. And then people can't even walk by when you're out there on the porch, you know, you need a little wiggle room in there.
Madam Chair, is my 2 cents would be to let staff work out something that was, that they felt would be the right thing.
I think the problem with that is
Well,
when somebody else comes here, do
Well-
we have to do this again?
well, hopefully not, but I'm probably that no matter what we do, that could happen. But then I was gonna ask the chief if he had any recommendations since.
No, I was just gonna say, we have a lot of decks in the city, and I don't think anybody takes up their entire backyard with it, so, you know, and no one, you know, but I would agree, I would want something that I can enjoy out on the back. No, there's nothing from our standpoint. I like it better off the back than the front, because the front, you know, I wouldn't want to have to mess with it.
Yeah, no front.
So do we have a consensus that we want no front, back only, and bump it up to 300 square feet?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Does everybody like that?
Yeah. They could always ask for a special exception if they want to go bigger, right?
They,
We go through the.
they could.
I think
That
that's
would
more
be, that would be a tough slog, but yes.
What is,
All right, so a maximum of 300 square
15
feet.
by 20,
at the rear
which,
of the
yeah,
main
when you're
structure.
talking about lumber, it would really be 14 by.
There you go. See.
It gives flexibility.
I mean, is that, do you think that would
think that's more-
not be embarrassing
that's more
to
acceptable.
go up to them with?
I think the average is probably in the 12 by 16 range. Because they're smaller homes, so
Right,
you're not gonna, you don't wanna,
Yeah, that's what.
you
I
don't
was
wanna
saying.
own a deck that has a house attached.
right.
But there's always that Yahoo.
Thank you.
That's what we're here for.
Mhm.
So that was the request. Thank you for considering it.
Thank you for waiting.
No problem. Have a good night. Thank you.
So we need an amendment to the amendment.
We need a motion
We
to,
need to do a public hearing first.
Yes, we do.
oh, for this.
Yeah.
Ah,
Don't go anywhere, public hearing. Someone might have a question.
we need to open the public hearing at 7:44. And
Yeah.
Unless someone calls on Zoom quick. Nope.
any takers? I'm surprised none of them called to give support, even the person who requested. Public, if you're listening, if you want stuff done, you've got to call. You've got to participate. This mo- We will end this public meeting at 7:45 after my 1-minute lecture.
So that, yes, now we need an amendment to
Now-
amend 1A to, within the parentheses section there. Go ahead. To, after the words, these calculations, comma, not to exceed a maximum of 300 square feet and must be in the rear of the main structure.
That was my amendment.
Is that your motion?
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
It's very well said. All those in favor?
Aye.
And it is unanimous.
Okay, now you're gonna take a vote on the whole thing. As amended.
Is that a,
We need a motion?
So we need a motion.
oh, so now we need another motion for the entire thing, including the
The amendment.
amended amendment.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that
Bless you.
we approve 05-020 SU and 05-28 CUP. Amendment 3, which has been amended by the planning board. Yeah.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? And we are unanimous. Okay. Let's keep moving to number 10, looks like explanation, 11, new business. Old business. Planning Department report.
I think I've talked enough tonight. I'm good.
Liaison reports. Rob, you want to give a little?
We haven't had any meetings.
Well, they had that little webinar and. But you sent out an email.
Like
We're
a
good.
detailed report on the webinar,
Yeah, replay.
Put it in an email.
9 or 10 o'clock.
Clip notes.
Charlie, you good on historic?
No, I'm just gonna say, we're still waiting for the city council to move forward with their recommendations. That they can formulate some new plan.
What are we talking about?
That would be Bob Susi, not you.
Oh. Goddamn Susie,
Good luck with that. All right.
Make
don't
sure
tell
you
him
get
I said
Make
that.
sure you get both those comments on the record. Yeah.
And I believe there is no other business, correct? We all good? We've had plenty of 11 o'clock nights. So could we have a, thank you, chief. And a second? Thank you, Rich. All right, all those in favor? Hey, we are adjourning at 7:48.